Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for everyone who's been waiting for me. And thank you for everyone joining us, all of our members, subscribers, all of the community, and everyone joining us new. In case you're new to our live streams, I do these regularly to talk about extra stuff, really, and open the space up for all of you to also share your thoughts and speak and have a platform and obviously ask questions, and I can also highlight some of the things that you also speak about. So tonight I wanted to speak with you about but before I speak to you about Abu Obeida's statement, I posted a couple of videos earlier on, one of them about the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas blaming the Palestinian Islamic resistance movement Hamas for giving Israel an excuse to commit the genocide in Gaza. And then I also spoke about more and more Israelis with a functioning moral compass refusing to serve in the Israeli army. Do you see how these two correlate? Do you see how these two things are connected? It's not about your nationality. It's not about your religion. It's not about the fact that you're Palestinian or Israeli or any other nationality or a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew. It's not about that. You have a Palestinian Zionist and an Israeli anti-Zionist. We can argue about the numbers, the level, how much here, how much there, all valid and good, fine, fair enough. But your background, your ethnic background, your national or religious background, it doesn't matter when it comes to cases of universal human rights where they require bravery, morals, demolishing the fear walls and standing up for what's right. So the Israelis who are refusing to serve in the army, they are facing their country, at many points their family, their society. They're risking it. They're risking getting in prison because many of them will go in prison. If you in Israel say that I will refuse to serve in the Israeli army because of moral reasons, because I'm against our army and it's committing crimes, you'll go to prison. You can get an exemption if you say, oh no, I'm a pacifist, or I have a problem, I have a mental illness, I have an injury, whatever, prescription from your doctor or what have you. So it's not about that. And I find it shameful. I find it absolutely shameful that the Palestinian president, and I know many of you already know this, but we need to say it, okay? Because the man is going and speaking on behalf of Palestine in these conferences and across the world. And the genocide supporters want him. The people who like Israel, the Zionists, they want him. Now you understand why they want him, because he's whitewashing Israeli crimes and blaming the resistance. Why is he blaming the resistance? Do you know why he's blaming the resistance? Because they managed to do, after the Al-Aqsa flood on the 7th of October, they managed to do what he couldn't dream about doing. Not even 1% of that. They woke the whole world up. They showed Israel's true ugly face that they've been hiding from the world. So he feels more and more irrelevant. How does he try to get back any sort of relevance? By appealing to his masters. By showing them how much of a loyal lapdog he is. How well he cleans their shoes as a doormat. That's how. How can you say that? How can you say that after a country killed over 35,000 people, over 15,000 children? How can someone say that? But I had to start off with that. Which leads me to Abu Obeida's speech. I'm not going to translate it word by word. By the way, with the original video, by the way, now they took down the Al-Qassam website. Do you know that? I used to get sources directly from their website, alqassam.ps, and other resistance movements like saraya.ps. Now they're gone. They're gone. So they rely on publishing this information for a couple of news networks that they trust, like they'll publish it to Al Jazeera, Al Arabi, and what have you. Okay. In the original video, what did they do, Al-Qassam? They translated everything to English already, but you couldn't see the translation due to the additional editing from the news networks. But I think if anyone published that video, although I haven't found it directly with everything, you can see all of it in writing, in English. However, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that he spoke about really, and know where things are going, where the Palestinian resistance stands, what are their views, where are they going exactly, what are their accomplishments, and obviously I'll open up the space for you afterwards and start mentioning your comments. Firstly, before I begin, Lindsay, thank you. Welcome to Supporter, by the way. Idil Hussein, thank you so much for your super thanks. And Daniela Modus Qatar, thank you so much for your super as well. And obviously everyone welcoming and participating. Thank you so much. And again, welcome, and welcome to everyone new who's just viewing us as well. So obviously Abu Obeida started with the typical stuff. He uses phrases from the Quran, labeling Israel as cowards, basically. Saying the verses that are saying they will not harm you except for slightly, and if they fight you, they will turn their backs on you, and then they will not be helped. Humiliation has fallen upon them wherever they are found. And then he mentioned and he described them as the killers of prophets as well, because of their disobedience. And he mentioned a couple of things as well afterwards, like a couple of religious scripts. Then he addressed, obviously, the Palestinian people in Gaza. He hailed the resistance from Yemen, from Iraq, and from Lebanon, and the masses and all of the free people in the world who are protesting and supporting. He said after 32 weeks since the glorious 7th of October, the great people of Gaza and the great mujahideen or strugglers of the resistance fighters are waging an unequal war and a legendary defense against Zionist barbarism in its ugliest form. They have not been weakened by this. They have not been weakened by this. So despite all of the disaster we're seeing, he's saying they have not been weakened by this. And we can see that evidently, really, from the heroic Palestinian people, come on, getting out from the rubble with all of this bravery, losing their children, and calling to continue the battle against these aggressors. They were afflicted. What did he say here? They have not been weakened by this. They were afflicted in the path of God, but they are not weak, nor were they humble. God loves those who are patient. And then he continued, for long days and nights, this enemy and this Nazi government practiced the ugliest forms of genocide against the people of Gaza in front of the eyes and ears of the world. They did not leave any crimes that they did not commit with all of this barbarism and without any type of military accomplishments. He also described what's happening as a systematic destruction, and that the Palestinian resistance is obviously fighting back, and they're trying to prevent them fighting back, but they are fighting them back. That's one of the things that he mentioned. He said that the new aggression in Al Zaytun, in Gaza City, and Jabalia that the Israelis have become easy targets, thinking that they have become easy targets and accused of having, something was missed here in the translation. He added that during these last 10 days in the battle between the resistance and Israel, the Palestinian resistance became much stronger than before. Now, I've been speaking about what's been happening with regards to the Palestinian resistance and Israel, especially in Jabalia, by the way. But one of the things that Abu Obeida declared is that they targeted over 100 Israeli vehicles in the course of just 10 days. Now, throughout this whole genocide, the Palestinian resistance targeted just over 1,200 Israeli vehicles, 1,000 of which Merkavas. This is declared by the Palestinian resistance. Many of it is documented too. He said that they targeted 100 in the last 10 days. That is a significantly higher ratio than what they used before. So the Israelis came back to the same areas that they withdrew humiliated from after committing acts of barbarism, by the way, bombing people left, right, and center. They came back to a stronger Hamas than before. They were more well-equipped. They had better tactics against them. They learned their lessons. But clearly Israel did not learn anything. That's why the latest articles that I spoke with you about in the last few videos in the past couple of days spoke about the defeated mentality of the Israeli soldiers, the fact that they have no faith, that they're frustrated, and that they have no will to fight. Because firstly, they came back to the same places that they were told they are done with. Okay? The government told them, well, you're done, that's it. But not only did they come back, okay, so the government lied to us. We dismantled Hamas, but then they're back. Okay, that's number one. That's frustrating. Clearly, mission not accomplished, and we thought it was just Rafah. What are you telling us about? Then they come back to a fiercer resistance. A fiercer resistance. He described what they used: anti-armor weapons, anti-individual, anti-aircraft weapons, exploding buildings, tunnel openings and minefields, carrying out precise sniping operations, complex ambushes, clashes from zero distance, dropping shells on soldier gathering vehicles and bombing them, mortars, short-range missiles, and at a much higher intensity than before. He mentioned about the people of Gaza that the people of Gaza, they have great faith and sky-high morale. And I think that's evident from what everyone is saying. With regards to the US, that's interesting. Obviously, we're having the talks now about the pier, that they opened the pier and it's ready to get this aid in. How ironic that this pier is just 20 miles away from the potential gas fields across Gaza. Very convenient. As if the United States of America, the US administration, is worried about the people of Gaza. We're worried about you. They're worried about the people of Gaza the same way that some Arab states' governments are worried about Gaza. Die, but we'll feed you to death. We'll feed you to death, not in the we'll give you a lot of food manner, but we'll feed you up until you die, because it's imminent. You know, you're going to die, but Hey, we'll give you a bit of food. Yeah, have some snacks. And then, because obviously we give Israel the weapons. This is their approach. He said that Israel is getting non-stop shipments of weapons from the American administration. He called them the sponsor of terrorism and devastation in the world. That's quite accurate. These American weapons are being used to exterminate our people, which claim the lives of innocent people every day and cause massive destruction, which is the only achievement of this arrogant, defeated enemy. The only achievement of this arrogant and defeated enemy is the massive destruction and killing innocent people. And that's been evident from day one. As a matter of fact, go back to the massacres a couple of days ago before I continue. And I was saying that about Israel ever since the beginning. They cover up their military failure by barbarism against the civilians. Wherever they have any sort of failure against the resistance, they suffer heavy casualties, they will go and take revenge with the people. And if you look at this whole campaign, revenge against the people, during which Israel massacred Israelis, ordered to shoot at anyone going back or being kidnapped, shooting aimlessly, shoot to kill, at any location where they suspect there are Hamas fighters with Israeli civilians, as Israeli civilians were describing from day one, and then later on the pilots started to reveal the information, how they were ordered to shoot at every vehicle going back from Nir Oz, from Re'im, from Be'eri to Gaza. And obviously in the Nova Festival, that was the most evident one from back from October, when the images of the helicopters were released and they tried to show them as if they're shooting Hamas members. What they didn't realize is it will have the complete opposite effect, similar to their X mistakes, where they, as in on the platform X, where they published fabricated videos. When the spokesperson of Benjamin Netanyahu published fabricated videos after they targeted this barbaric attack on Al-Ma'madan hospital that, by the way, goes back to the Church of England, funny enough, who's not saying a word against this genocide. They had to delete it. And the Israelis saw, and it spread like wildfire, shooting at them. Like he said, basically taking revenge against the people. And that's the only thing that they were successful in. He continued, we in the Martyr Azz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, and on the 224th day of the Battle of Al-Aqsa flood and the war against our people, we affirm the following. Firstly, what is taking place is a heroic confrontation by our mujahideen. The resistance of our people and the fierce, renewed and continuous fighting of the enemy in all areas of its aggression and its lost operations in the sands of Gaza confirm that we have what we have affirmed since the first day of this war. Our ability, with God's help, to withstand this fight, no matter how long the aggression lasts and whatever its form, and that despite our complete eagerness to stop the aggression against our people, we are prepared for this battle. We are prepared for this battle. Let me just comment here. Assume that Hamas will be done in about 40 days. As a matter of fact, there were talks leaked previously about what labels itself as the international community, by the way. It's not the international community. What labels itself as the international community, which is the genocide cartel of mostly Western powers, primarily led by the superpower, the United States of America. They gave Israel 45 days to do whatever the hell they want to do. There's an argument that they extended that later on, I know. But when it comes to the level of heavy bombardment, the casualties per day, we had 1,000 a day at one point for several days. And obviously them taking back their aircraft carriers from the Mediterranean after they said they were there to deter Iran and what have you. They gave Israel 40 days, 40 to 45 days. Israel didn't succeed. And Benjamin Netanyahu, at least Benjamin Netanyahu, now there's an interesting shift, by the way, in Israel. Now there's a bit more understanding at the top level in Israel when it comes to extending the war. They don't like each other, they're split, they hate each other to bits, but they are afraid of the day after because they know whenever there's an investigation, if something's going to happen, all of them are going to be in trouble. So all of a sudden, we're seeing the IDF chief is also talking about, we need to continue the military pressure. We need to do this. We need to do that. That wasn't the case all the time. What I wanted to say is that Benjamin Netanyahu was selling the notion that we need military pressure on Hamas to achieve our military goals, our military objectives. Only through military pressure will Hamas concede and give in and potentially release the prisoners. What happened on the ground was contrary from the beginning. What happened on the ground was contrary from the beginning. Why? Israel has not released, apart from like one or two alive. Forget about the bodies of Israeli citizens that Israel killed, by the way. Most of them were killed by Israel. You remember once when 3 fled and they shot them? We spoke about that as well. 3 Israelis managed to flee. They were held by a group other than Al-Qassam brigades, by the way. Not all of them have, ultra secure areas. So they managed to flee. Help, speaking in Hebrew, IDF shoots all of them. That's your... That's the Israeli army for you, because some people sell as if they care about the Israel. They don't care about anyone. What happened? They only released prisoners after they negotiated with Hamas. So clearly that whole narrative has been demolished completely. Now it's being demolished even further. Because what the resistance is proving to Israel is that not only they're unable to affect them negatively and decrease their power, they are getting stronger. The Palestinian resistance is getting stronger. The level of attacks on Israeli forces in Jabalia and the central camps in Rafah, all across of these areas, what Israel described as the most intense fighting since the 7th of October. That's in Israel. And when Israel says that, read between the lines. They will not admit to the level of casualties. They will not. But masses. We had massive of numbers of people completely done from the Israeli army. So he's reaffirming that obviously they have this capacity to continue, that they're eager to stop the war, but that they're prepared for this battle. Long exhaustion of the enemy and a quagmire in which he will not gain anything by remaining or entering any part of Gaza other than killing their soldiers and hunting down his officers. This is not because we are a superpower, but because we are people. We are the people of this land and the holders of the rights. We are the people of this land and we are the holders of the rights, and that's why Israel wouldn't be able to defeat them or deal with them or negatively affect their actions against them. He also continued to say about the Israelis who are kidnapped in Gaza. Now, according to him, they're being killed. Obviously, they constantly release these things about the Israelis being killed in Gaza. And he also supported and showed gratitude for the resistance in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Yemen, and all across the fronts. Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and obviously the support of Iran too. He also mentioned the global awakening, that everything that's been happening since the 7th of October has woken the whole world up. We also salute the people who rise up in the face of injustice and crime of the occupation, and those who stand in solidarity with our people and the just cause from all nationalities and races of the world, on all its continents, the United States, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Islamic and Arab world. The unprecedented global solidarity and movement, he said, that exposes the occupation, exposes its ugly truth, and expresses the earthquake that Al-Aqsa flood caused at the level of the global consciousness. And in the arenas and fronts that stirred on many levels, it will have a major strategic impact. To add to that, by the way, Israel, many political leaders in Israel, one of them was Nir Barakat, who actually quoted that. He said that, in particular, US public opinion, the US public opinion is like a matter of life or death for Israel, is necessary for our existence. This is how important it is, at least in the US. And you've seen these leaks today about these business leaders who had a WhatsApp group that was published online in a couple of newspapers, and one of them was the CEO of Starbucks, sitting there forming a WhatsApp group with other business leaders, billionaires, saying how they need to control the narrative when it comes to Israel and support Israel. Little they knew what's coming for them. Starbucks with the massive boycott campaign. I mean, this boycott has been so effective. It's literally taking down organizations completely. And then he obviously ended up with a couple of religious texts as well, saying they're going to continue by the help of God. And he mentioned the martyrs, may God accept our righteous martyrs, heal the fallen wounded, release the chains and of the captives, and reunite the people in every country. These were the highlights from Abu Obeida. Key takings, obviously. Number one, the resistance is stronger. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not that it's weaker, it's stronger. That's number one. Secondly, they have the capacity to continue. He's highlighting the importance of the global awakening and all of the solidarity movement and how important it is. If we read between the lines, okay, if we read between the lines, I won't be too long, and then I'll open up the space up for you. Egypt refused. Obviously, again, a disclaimer here, all right? So that people don't misunderstand what I'm saying. No one did anything enough to a level to stop the genocide and intimidate Israel. For Israel to be intimidated, it needed to be threatened with the same force that it's inflicting and using against the Gazan people. Only then would Israel be intimidated. But Israel is not intimidated. That's why it carries this out, not just by the support of the corrupt and hypocrite Western powers, but by the lack of action of Arab and neighboring countries who did not threaten Israel with retaliation. And because Israel doesn't feel threatened, no one told Israel, listen, I'll level parts of your country if you dare to do that to Gaza. No one said that to Israel. If they did, do you think they'd dare? They're cowards. They only attack by airplanes. And you see their little genocidal maniac and TikTok soldiers, what they're getting in Gaza. They're having a massive beating. They're being humiliated to pieces. They're being ripped to shreds in Gaza. Zero distance in every aspect. Okay? What we understand, no Arab country did anything enough to that level. However, there are certain actions that prevented Israel from accomplishing the mission and made life more difficult to Israel. One of them is the lack of Egyptian cooperation when it comes to the ethnic cleansing and to the Rafah crossing and to the tunnels, the undeclared tunnels between Gaza and Egypt. Israel now told the ICJ that Hamas have 50 tunnels going to Egypt. Why would they say that? Why would they say that? They're trying to push Egypt to a corner. Egypt denies, and they should deny, if there are any tunnels. I mean, in my assumption, there are definitely tunnels. I mean, in my opinion, there are tunnels still from functioning. As a matter of fact, Hamas most likely used tunnels on the 7th of October to Israel, but did not post anything about them so that they can keep them hidden. Why are they saying that about Egypt? That there's 50 tunnels going from Rafah, as if they know. You don't know the tunnels in Gaza. You think we're going to know the tunnels in from Gaza to Egypt? Talking rubbish, but why did they say that? Okay. They said that because Egypt joined the ICJ, that's number one, and also because Egypt is still refusing to deal with them on the Rafah crossing. Israel is semi-controlling. It's a semi-control. It's not a full control because they're still getting confrontation with the resistance. The Rafah crossing, and they've asked Egypt to open up the Rafah crossing multiple times. Egypt doesn't want to do that. Why? Because they don't want to create a new status quo where Israel wants to create a new status quo. It's not about getting the aid in. It's not about making sure that the Palestinians don't receive like weapons or what have you from over the ground. It's about them implementing the ethnic cleansing policy, because that's the number one priority, the ethnic cleansing policy, the genocide, and having full control on the Palestinians in Gaza. What I understand from what's happening with Hamas, apart from the fact that they manufacture 24/7, and that they have people who are willing to fight, and they have people like Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader in 2021, said our fighters were working around the clock to dig and build and manufacture, and when we were telling them go home, they weren't going home. We told them have a break, go home. They weren't going home. All of that is nice, but there's still a limit to supply. There's still a limit to how much you can have. To have this level of equipment, of production, of strength, you refreshing yourself that quickly, reorganizing everything that quickly. Not that they were not organized at any point, by the way, but you're talking about areas that suffered tremendous bombings. But again, always the Palestinian infrastructure, the resistance infrastructure was always intact. They're still using attack tunnels to this day on Israel, popping out of tunnels out of nowhere, planting shuwath, explosive devices, hacking, disappearing. They're still doing this to this day in North Gaza. Egypt still had some sort of support to Gaza. It's difficult to interpret it in any other way, okay? Because for them to continue manufacturing, to continue the supply, to introduce new weapons throughout, there must be something going on. Obviously, parties will deny, and they should deny. Why? You need to keep yourself safe, right? And Israel is Israel is very frustrated by this, to a level where Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, he said that Egypt bears liability, they have responsibility for the 7th of October. Why? Because they were helping Hamas. Look at yourself. Who gave Hamas hundreds of millions? Come on, these people have no self-reflection whatsoever. Everything deflect. This is how they're born and raised and indoctrinated. This twisted approach, psychopathic maniacs. Who gave Hamas hundreds of millions? Benjamin Netanyahu. Why? Because he wanted to keep the separation between Gaza and the West Bank, and he thought that by giving Hamas money and continuing the rule over Gaza, that they will be pleased and that they will be fine. He thought that they were sellouts, or that they would convert, right? They'll have a conversion to Zionism like the Palestinian president had. Convert to Zionism. A Palestinian Zionist. He thought that Hamas would become Palestinian Zionists at one point. Little he knew that Hamas is not about Hamas. Hamas isn't about Hamas. Hamas is about human rights. Hamas is about the rights of the Palestinian people, of liberation, about Al-Aqsa, about the people who are imprisoned, about the refugees. And from their perspective, they can all be demolished. Hamas as a movement, they sacrifice themselves. Otherwise, how can you explain what they're doing? What, didn't they know that they're going to be attacked after they conducted the 7th of October? Of course they knew. Weren't they in bloody wars previously? Of course they did. But they fight for something bigger. They don't fight for worldly rewards or money or what have you. And despite the fact that they warned Israel, Israel still decided to put its head in the sand. The commander-in-chief of Al-Qassam Brigades himself, when he talks, he sends a message. The fact that you have a statement from him, that says that there's something really big. So he declared, for example, Al-Aqsa flood, and he described the reasoning behind it, and I spoke about it, by the way, earlier on during the genocide. In 2021, we had a similar case. What happened? Okay, we had Gaza was, okay, it's a blockade and it's suffering, all of that, okay, but there is no active kind of war. The people are suffering under occupation, tragedy in terms of day-to-day life, blockade, all of these things, but there is no active war going on. But Israeli squatters, they decide to have a march in Jerusalem. That's a hate march. Hate march like death to Arabs, cursing the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. May all of your villages burn. This, all sorts of ugly stuff. Okay. He gave them an ultimatum at the time. Muhammad al-Dif. He told Israel, you have up until 6 p.m. this evening to cancel this march in Jerusalem. Otherwise, bear the consequences. They didn't listen. 6 p.m., missiles launched at the settlers, missiles from Gaza. Okay. Now, what does that tell you as a country? That tells me that these people are not just looking for a couple of $1 million or ruling over people like a small municipality. They care about the holy sites. They care about their prisoners. They care about oppression. They care about the refugees. They care about justice and liberty. And they're willing to sacrifice. So there was this limited escalation. But then when we had a de-escalation, again, what does Israel do? Head in the sand again. No reflection, no looking back at what they did before, no looking forward to the future, no thinking even economically. Like in my book, I also had an argument about how much cheaper it is to implement equality instead of spending all of this money on the military 24/7. But obviously you're talking about a neo-colonialist, supremacist country that doesn't want to reach a solution. And the way they're going and the way that they're being enabled, we are unfortunately headed to something potentially far worse than what we've seen in the past 7 months. Okay, let me see if you have any comments. Sorry, I took my time here. I've been talking for 40 minutes. I usually give myself 20 minutes and then open up the space for you. What happened today? Okay, I'm sorry about that. It's supposed to be for you. These wild times asking me, hello, Mahmoud, have you seen the Washington Post article about Israel's plans for Gaza? It's not reading making sense. The article is called What Israel's Strategic Corridor in Gaza Reveals About Post-War Plans. Well, we have an idea. Yeah, taking it over to civilian structures and raising homes, quoting satellites and other imagery, visual evidence and effort that military analysts and Israeli experts say part of a large-scale project to reshape the Strip. Yeah, I mean, that was evident from the beginning, really. Firstly, cutting Gaza in half, taking full control of the north, starting to resettle, and then they call, I wouldn't call it resettle, I call it re-squat or re-steal, because that's what they do. That's not a settlement. They're thieves, land grabbers, these people. But yeah, that's evident, even from the ambiguous Pierre. Like, what is this about? You know, you have all of the land routes. Open them. Okay. Where were we? Marvin is saying the Arab nations that didn't say anything about the genocide, are they on US payroll, get aid every year? I believe Egypt gets $1 billion a year from the US, but couldn't stay silent anymore. Look, Egypt receives foreign aid. It receives about $3 billion approximately a year. But even with that, that's not enough for their military expansion. So they spend more than that. But obviously, if you're not exactly familiar with how aid works, the money most likely doesn't leave the US even. Why? Because they are obliged by this foreign aid deal. It's a scam. to buy U.S. Weapons. So what does the American government do technically? They steal money off people, taxes, and they send them to big corporations. That's foreign aid. It's not there to support the development of other countries or what have you, because all of it is aligned with their geopolitical purposes. They wouldn't give foreign aid to countries that genuinely need foreign aid to thrive, or basic food here and there, okay. And even with the Egyptian army, they wouldn't give them anything that is above what they give Israel. And Egypt always complained. That's why they started diversifying their military purchases. But look, some of them have been speaking about it, but not to a level where anything is changing, really. Condemning what Israel is doing. Okay, which sane person doesn't condemn? It's no longer about condemning. It's about taking action, using some leverage. And no, it doesn't have to be like military all the time. Like, threaten with serious things. Try and see if that works, okay? But we saw the opposite. We saw them helping Israel when they were being boycotted, really, and stopped, and had a blockade imposed on them by Ansarullah. Okay, where were we? Terry Lynn Nelson, in the case the question got lost, Mahmoud, what are the chances that... Oh, thank you for repeating them, because sometimes they do get lost. Regime change in Israel to facilitate a permanent ceasefire from Gaza, or is that too unlikely? The funny thing is, a couple of months ago, in the polls in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu lost a lot of mandates. He still had a massive number of people following him, but he lost a lot of mandates. What happened now is he's gaining mandates. What does that tell you? That some people are supporting him and increasing the support. He's not like leading like before, but he's not at his worst. That is partially due to the fact that the people around him aren't really promoting an alternative. The opposition, center, whatever it is, even though in Israel, really, you talk about either fascist or light fascist, like ultra fascist or light fascist. That's how it is in Israel. There's no left, right, and center. There's either light fascist or apart from like small movements on the poor left that include some of the Palestinians or very leftist Israeli movements and what have you, insignificant, and they don't really make any difference when it comes to the country's decisions. If the opposition is telling you no Palestine, if the supposedly alternative to Netanyahu, Benny Gantz, is also saying we need to continue now, he's aligning himself with the same rhetoric and narrative as Benjamin Netanyahu, what does that tell the voters? I'd stick with Netanyahu then. And Netanyahu's feeling that. That's why he's stretching. It's not like there's someone in Israel who is on an anti-war mission, a leader who will say, no, stop everything and let's make peace. He'll say, stop everything so we can get our hostages back and then continue to demolish Hamas and continue the genocide later on. This is what they'll say. But there is no, unfortunately, I cannot see any hope in the current political climate in Israel for anything good, unfortunately. And they obviously keep pushing on the racist narrative and the supremacist narrative, and that obviously doesn't help, let alone the education system that raises people on bigotry, on a pseudo-history, pseudo-narrative, supremacy, violence. All of that does not help, to say the least. John Doe, thank you so much for your super thanks. You said from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Once Palestine is all free, Abbas and Bibi will have to flee. Yeah, I think so. I think both of them will flee together. Abbas and Bibi will have to flee. Very, very accurate. Amin Danya, thank you for your super thanks. You also said maybe there's something I don't understand. Israel apparently can have countries join them on the ground. For example, America, but not any other country also join Palestinian on the ground as well. Can you make some of it? This is the reality of the world today. The unipolar world. The US world police world. That's what it's about. Because think about it this way. If the Palestinians had that option of having someone supporting them on the ground, or getting the same level of open support that Israel is getting, Israel, a genocidal state, proven genocidal state, barbaric, racist, supremacist, depraved state, committing a genocide in broad daylight, broadcasted. The people who are going through the genocide are documenting it and publishing it to the world. Yet with all of that, they're getting the weapons to continue the genocide. And you have politicians supporting them. You have Western politicians supporting them to continue this genocide. But the Palestinian resistance is labeled. Again, why is that the case? It's because we have a unipolar world still. It's changing. It's changing bit by bit. Ukraine started to accelerate it more and more. Now Gaza's taking it to the peak. It's going to accelerate it even further. A unipolar world means a tiny extremist minority can act like it's the majority. The US, UK, France, EU states can say that we're the international community. We're the international community. Who gave you the authority to say that you're the international community? And what do you mean by the international community? Let's take the view of Palestine, for example. Hamas, labeled, proscribed organization. According to a pathetic 34 countries, most of which with a rich history in enslavement, mass genocides, racism, bigotry, white supremacy, whatever you can think of. How much are they in comparison to the rest of the world? 17%. They say Hamas are the baddies. 83% of the world, the international community, the East, the global South, right? The people of the countries who have this view officially of the conflict view things completely differently. But their view is not being implemented. Why? Because the ones on top, they have power, and they're not interested in democracy or what people have to say or what people have to think. All they care about is indoctrination, instilling fear in people, labeling, obviously, as if the victim is the one to blame, right? And continuing to do what they do. If we lived in a multipolar world, if the power was evenly spread between nations, if we had a true representation of the populations across the world, including, by the way, the same Western powers that are not representing their people, we would have had a different story. The only way they're trying to make things work is a spinning of a small minority. Like, have you thought about it for a second? Who supports Israel? Who supports Israel? Please tell me. A depraved, immoral, extremist minority. You can't have morals and support Israel. You can't be morally consistent and support Israel. You can't be not a racist person and support Israel. You have to, because they're established on violent religious and ethnic supremacy. Religious and ethnic, because they obviously ethnicized Judaism to an extent, and they fooled a lot of people, but they didn't fool all of them, because so many Jewish people, more than ever now, are speaking up. And many used to speak from a long time ago, we know that, but now it's getting even more and more. But that slowly but surely is shifting. And now is the final attempt. It's the final attempt of the sponsors of terrorism in the world, the United States, the EU states, the real sponsors of terror across the world. They're fighting the last battle over Israel. Their project is working with the proxy war in Ukraine. It's not working. They're failing in Africa. Africa's expelling all of the colonialists, and they're uniting now, expelling the French forces, expelling the US forces, expelling everyone. And they're talking about unity. Israel is their last shot in the Middle East, and they will lose. Marvin is saying, once this is over, what do you think the likelihood of Palestine will get benefit from the oil, gas, coast of Palestine? I think the resources could make a nation of Palestine wealthy. Nothing. They're committing a genocide to get to the oil. What does that send you? They don't care. They wouldn't ask the Palestinians for anything. But again, I don't think it can be accomplished. They can dream on unless you have something to do with the Palestinians. And Israel, I don't think they'll ever agree to such a thing, because they deny the existence of. Why do we say Palestinian, and put a Palestine flag and a Palestine stick? Why do we say that? Out of love for nationality? I don't like nationality. Personally, I couldn't care less about nationality. Take no pride in nationality. It means nothing. Okay? But it's because there are people who are denying existence. Someone is denying your existence. No, I'm Palestinian, and I'll raise the Palestinian flag. Okay? It's a matter of universal human rights. But they're denying this existence. If they're going to start talking with the Palestinians, it's as if we admit that you exist. They don't admit that. Plus, listen to what all of their leadership is talking about. From the ones in power to the opposition. Netanyahu, we won't accept a Palestinian state, nor a Hamas state, nor a Fatah state. And we will have full security between the Jordan River to the sea. Okay. Gantz, same thing. Gallant, very similar. Yair Lapid, head of the opposition. Yeah, we can't have a Palestinian state now. We won't reward the 7th of October. Still talking about the people with the same mentality. Not looking in the mirror once. Not looking in the mirror once. Even the people in Israel, most of them, who were protesting against the judicial reform before this genocide started, they were protesting to preserve Jewish supremacy in Israel. They weren't worried about equality between the Jordan River to the sea. If they were, then they could have potentially have been more successful, providing a real alternative to what's happening in Israel. But Israel is at such a sick level in general. Racism is so core, so solid, so established in the country that it's impossible to reach a solution with them unless you dismantle the system of apartheid. The system, Zionism, needs to be dismantled from its poisonous root. You deal with the root cause of the problem, with the virus, with the disease. You eliminate the disease first, and then start talking with people. And then start talking with people equally. Eliminate the disease, and then start talking to everyone in that country. Doesn't matter who they are, what's their background, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Israeli, Palestinian, whatever it is, then start talking. But dismantle the disease first. If you go to a good doctor, he won't deal with your side effects. The resistance is a side effect or an antidote to what? To a problem, to a virus. Get rid of the damn virus. And if you don't get rid of it, you are paving the way for a bloodier war in the future, in the near future. If anyone had an ounce of sense, they would reflect, look, what we've been doing is wrong all of these years. We need to address the needs of the Palestinian people, historic and contemporary, and once and for all establish equality. One man, one vote, equal rights between Jordan River to the sea. And if you don't like that, you automatically label yourself as a bigoted individual who doesn't believe in the concept of equality. And that shouldn't be the case now. That's we're in the 21st century. God made us all equal in rights. Okay? Equal in dignity. There's a verse in the Quran that says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have dignified the sons of Adam, Adam's descendants, everyone, all of humanity. Same dignity. We deserve the same dignity. Anyone who doesn't believe in that concept, they have a problem. They don't believe in equality. Why should I believe that so-and-so doesn't have the same rights as I do? Based on his skin color or religion or ethnic background. That's Israel. That's what the West is protecting in Israel. That's what the Western countries are supporting in Israel. Not the people, but the people in power. When we say the West, so that people, because obviously you have so much support with the people. Western powers, they support apartheid and supremacy. That's what they support. They support racism in Israel. Simple. Then there's other arguments, obviously, about the geopolitics, splitting the Arab nations, not letting nationalist or a new kind of wave of democracy that represents the people and having, advancements or what have you. Why? To keep the US hegemony, to keep the US empire. Kill everyone, kill the competition. That is not sustainable. That is not sustainable. Eddie, thank you for your super thanks. And John Doe, thank you so much for your super thanks. You said this is to support and thank you a great deal, Brother Mahmoud, for your hard work and also your constant good manners and kindness. Not like me. No, of course you are. You're very kind. Thank you so much. I am not as merciful as I religiously should. And don't forget, marhaba bik fi Paris and Marrakesh. Thank you so much, brother. And thank you very much for your generosity and kindness. And look, I mean, look, to be fair, I totally believe what I'm talking about. Like I know that I talk when we, like, for example, when it comes about news stuff or things to do with the resistance, to show people what's actually happening on the ground, facts. But I genuinely try and speak from my heart and not coat it with anything. And I believe in there is a genuine human good in people. All that needs to happen is that it needs to be found. They try and coat it. They try and put so many curtains on it, by fear, by racism, by bigotry, by labeling. Oh, terrorism, nonsense, 24/7. All of that is to scare you, so that that human potential, the compassion that you have in you, to a level where you can't even sympathize with people who are suffering. This is what happens with certain people, to that level. And they know, the people who do these things, they know what they're doing. Don't underestimate their intelligence. But now more and more people are breaking the barrier. That's it. They're destroying the walls of fear. And once you destroy them, you realize how much of an illusion they were. It's an illusion. But when your mind believes it, it becomes a reality. It's like when you have, sometimes, not with all of them, obviously, sometimes when you have something going on in your mind, or something mental or psychological, you start feeling it in your body. You start shivering. It's in your head. You don't have a physical condition in your body, but your mind is sending signals. And they use that as mass manipulation. Thought police, 1984, in a more acceptable manner, like, but now it's becoming more and more blatant, though. Mind Over Matter is asking a very nice question. You said, when do you think BRICS plus nations would overtake NATO, G7, and US, and what impact will a multipolar world have on Palestinians? I'll be totally frank with you. I wish it didn't have to be a competition. I wish it could have been joint collaboration. I wish it could have been that way. But the US empire doesn't play that way. And look at its history. Everyone needs each other across the world. You can't be one nation sitting on your own, being self-sufficient in everything. You can obviously produce, you can create things, you can do a lot, right? Have lots of exports, but we're living in an open world. What's so difficult? Think about it from this way. What's so difficult about collaborating, having economic ties, opening borders, not closing them, be more accepting, having a full global world that is colorful and multicultural and multi-faith and beautiful, like it is? What's the problem with that? I'll tell you what's the problem with that. The problem with that world isn't for you and me. You and me would like that. But the problem with that world is that it would hinder the greedy ones who only seek control and power and don't want people or nations to thrive and don't want anyone to question them. But at some point, if the momentum keeps going, if these people are held to account, you're constantly monitoring them, constantly active, not getting apathetic, they must change at some point. Things must change and will change. And this is how every single significant shift in human history took place. In many cases, it was much bloodier, by the way. When you spoke about the abolishment of slavery in the US, you had civil war. People wanted to keep the blacks enslaved. Workers' rights after the Industrial Revolution, people were dying while working. Again, the big corporations crack down. No, shoot them down. We need to keep them working 24/7 on nothing. Women's rights, women's votes. No, a woman is lesser than you. She doesn't understand. She doesn't have enough of a brain. Sacrifice, ongoing work, and this. So that's the same. Now, when you talk about a genuine multipolar world, and by the way, when I what I view, how I view a multipolar world, by the way, isn't a multipolar world at loggerheads. No, a multipolar world to protect people, because power with one group is very dangerous and it corrupts. That's what should be distributed. And then we communicate and talk and deal and trade and live and immigrate and everything. But obviously some people, they don't want that. They don't want that. But the more people are active, the more people are aware, the more people are open-minded, open-hearted, you are able to understand all of this. And things will change. By the way, inevitably, it's inevitable that they will change. And the effect on the Palestinians would be good. Because what do the Palestinians want? What do they want? They want equality, that's it. They want to breathe. They want to be left alone. They're being suffocated by this racist apartheid country. They're suffocated. And now slaughtered, not just suffocated. They just want to be left alone. Just equal rights. Let me live, let me breathe, let me go, let me walk, let me have my own destiny. But no, they're on them like that. Supported by who? Countries that call themselves democratic and human rights and equality. And we're the enlightened ones and supporting them. Marvin Vergas is saying, how do you eliminate disease? Number one, by recognizing that there is a disease. Once we realize there is a disease, we say we want to eliminate the disease. We know that there's a disease. Good, excellent. Now we know that there is a disease. With this disease, you have many ways where it can be changed. The least harmful, the least bloody, the most peaceful way to eliminate this disease is a shift internally, an internal shift. You start by changing the rhetoric, opening up, giving more rights, changing the indoctrination, changing the education system, having a completely different tone in the media, having a more peaceful tones going out. Is that likely? Unfortunately not. It could have been great if it was, but it's not. What does that mean? That means that the harsh truth is it's looking like there's going to be a lot of destruction before there will be rebuilding and healing. There will be. It will end. It will end, by the way. All of this will end at one point. Undeniably, it's certain it will end. But after what? How Israel is moving on, how it's being enabled by Western powers mostly, and not intimidated enough by neighboring countries. Enough, by the way, because the Palestinian resistance, the Lebanese resistance, the movements, they are making a shift, by the way. Dramatic moves, and that's important. That will change things, by the way. But that's a different story. They will continue down this path up until something much bloodier comes to play. If they stop, if the Western powers simply stop supporting Israel and start boycotting, divesting, imposing sanctions, similarly to what they did with South Africa, it would end. It would force them to end. They can't live. It doesn't have to be bloody. Boycott, sanctions, divestment. Boycott, divestment, sanctions. They will be done. That's it. And it doesn't have to be bloody. Then they will be forced to have a solution. But if they continue to be supported with weapons, with arms, to keep the blood money going, the bloody wars going on, as you can clearly see, the other side will not be silent. And don't forget one thing. At one point, in the first Intifada in 1987, the Palestinians only had stones. They were fighting all of this force with stones and sticks. And then they started to develop bit by bit, up until we reached this stage where they can defeat an army. So you can see where things are going. If it's not in a month, a year, 2, 3, 4 years, 5, it's inevitably getting there. Question is there anyone sane in these Western governments that will say enough is enough? And primarily in the United States, by the way. Primarily, it has to be in the United States. What other countries do is very effective. Some countries stopped exporting weapons. Some of them are cutting ties. Some of them are, decreasing their level of representation. All of that is good. But the US is the main country that's supporting them massively. Because they took over the role of Britain, who established them. But after the fall of the British Empire, you had the US Empire. And the more voices, the more resistance we have from within the United States, the better it is for everyone, for all of humanity. And I think we will get there. Violet saying, how many Jewish people on our side? It's Zionists that we have a problem with. Interesting. You see, there is no official stat about this. Like, I haven't seen an international poll saying, for example, only for Jewish people in multiple countries across the world, saying how many of you describe yourselves as Zionists. Now, from my perspective, I always differentiated, really. I differentiate between Zionist, Jewish, Israeli, and Semitic. There's a difference between them. You can have a combination of them. You can have a combination. But there are differences. I think whatever the number is, it's increasing. That's all I can tell you. The level of activism from Jewish groups and people with the Jewish community is unprecedented. And if you're not seeing them, it's because mainstream media doesn't want you to see them. because they want to sell the lie that it's against the Jewish people. And that's why they make a point by wearing a kippah, by saying we're Jewish here. And now we knew that from the beginning. I personally knew people, people in Israel who are anti-Zionists, blatantly, and are vocal about it and go to prison for it. I know people who describe themselves as Jewish Palestinians. Okay. Now you're talking about a different level. Now is a different level. And I think that big change from within the Jewish community is also a big contributor that could push for that change. Because you can't make a change on your own. That's why I constantly tell people it's not a religious conflict. You have religious elements in it that relate to certain beliefs or certain morals that you have, or things that motivate you, things that push you back, or things that refrain you from doing something. We have that. But it's in its essence, it's a human rights case. Some countries who are not looking at what's happening in Gaza now, if animals were slaughtered somewhere, it'd be all over the headlines 24/7. If animals. If a country was killing dogs or what have you in such a barbaric manner, such as Israel is conducting in Gaza, it would have been on the first pages 24/7. But they're not. Why? Because they're as depraved as Israel. They are as racist as Israel. They are an extension of this Zionist supremacist mentality, and they don't want you to know. But when you go, when you walk, when you meet the people, when you see them, you know. How much can you hide it? They'll come up with something else, and another scarecrow, and another this, and another that. That's it. Windy Melly, thank you so much for your super thanks. Mahmoud, you look like you're in your late 20s, but you speak words of wisdom like an elder. Lol. Thank you so much. No, I'm older than that. I'm 36 now. But I'm pleased to hear that you think I look in my late 20s. Thank you for that. And I really do appreciate the super thanks and comment. Okay, where were we? Excuse me if I missed some of them, because we have a couple of the messages keep going up and down here, even if you do them live or top chat. Okay. Island Vibes is saying, don't forget the genocide and mass expulsions of Native Americans, Japanese camps, and current police brutality and mass incarceration of African American men between the ages of 18 to 45. Absolutely. Some estimates 100 million of Native Americans. Japan, they were nuking them, and they're bragging about it to this day. No regard for human life. What kind of people are we talking about? Are they people? What are they? What kind of person doesn't have compassion or empathy to that level? And the police brutality of African Americans in the U.S., of course. Whenever I look at the U.S. police brutality, it reminds me of Israel. Very similar. Shazad Ahmed is also asking a nice question. He's saying, Mahmoud, don't you think that no matter what the world thinks or wants, It's the powerful of this world with the agenda that suit their masters who will win until the assistance of the divine. I don't necessarily think that. Look, I'm personally a believer, okay? I'm a devout Muslim, alhamdulillah. But with faith or without faith, there are certain actions that, if they are taken, they make a difference, okay? Obviously, as a believer, you believe in divine blessings with certain actions, especially when it's a good deed, when you're righteous, when you do good. And you're a believer, that's double the reward, okay? However, if you look at nations, regardless of what they used to believe or not believe, let's say resistance, okay? Vietnam. What's their religion? What's their background? They fought, they resisted. You could also argue that they did have a divine assistance, because God, Allah, is all merciful, all compassionate. His mercy encompasses everything. So he will be with the oppressed. And even if you look at it from an Islamic perspective, there's they call it da'wat al-madlum. It's very strong. The prayer of the oppressed. When you're oppressed and you're praying, that's a powerful prayer. So I don't think that they always win. No, absolutely not. History proves that they don't always win. As a matter of fact, look at now. Are they winning? Can anyone describe that as a win? What Israel and the elite and what they're suffering now, is that a win? No, of course not. A win for them is to keep you asleep, apathetic, having your mouth shut, zipped, and them continuing at a low heat. Similar to the declared foreign policy of the US, low heat conflicts. But not things getting out of control so that people are active and there's media awareness and people are questioning everything and they're going back to Iraq and oh my God, they're seeing what we've done in Abu Ghraib. They know that they killed a billion. Oh my God, they think Osama bin Laden, he made a lot of sense at some point. Then they'll think, oh, 9/11, ooh, wow. They don't want that. They've been working so hard to keep these things hidden under the propaganda and lies and spins. Terrorism and constantly linking Islam with terrorism in a malicious, racist, Islamophobic attempt, and promoting hatred, pushing bigotry and division between societies based on race and religion, immigration, all of these things. Why is that there? To say that I'm not the problem, they're the problem. I have no problem, they're the problem. And I'll scare you to a level where you're only going to focus on them and not me, regardless of what I do. But that collapsed. They can no longer do that. And that's a loss. That's not a win. That's a loss. However, it's important. It's exceptionally important that people continue. They don't stop. And don't believe mainstream media. Even if they change the narrative, don't believe them. Even if they start saying right things, don't believe them. Don't believe the politicians who already had a bad position when it comes to this. Never believe them. They're liars. They will continue to lie. And whatever it is they're selling you, they're putting poison. They're injecting poison. So be careful. Harry C. Smith is saying, I remember in the 90s, the entire world boycotted everything South Africa until apartheid ended. That's why we all have to do it again. Boycott everything from Israel and all companies invested in it. Totally. Totally. How can you support companies who support genocide or apartheid? Blatantly as well. How can that happen? And if it continues, they won't be able to survive. They're not able to maintain themselves even with all of the support they're getting from the world's biggest superpower against a bunch of people who carried their coffins with them and are not afraid to fight them. What will they do if there's more action? What will they do if you have a massive, that are continuous, by the way? They will not last. They will not last. Shiva Mohan 89 is saying Jews to support Arabs in New York. It's a minority, but Jews do support you. That's how I find this channel. Look, I have many good, excellent friends in the Jewish community who post my content, who publish my content on their platforms, and who communicate regularly. Why? Because we believe in the same principles: equality, justice, universal human rights. Simple. Regardless of what everyone is telling, again, on mainstream media, the poison, be careful. The poison, be careful of the poison. But yeah, I'm not surprised because I have lots of communication with many people as well. Kirk Doherty is saying, Medea Benjamin in Code Pink is Jewish, and plenty of Holocaust survivors have protested online and in the streets constantly. Yeah, I mean, like I had a podcast, I think it was over a month ago, with Daniel Mate, the son of Gabor Mate. If you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it. Holocaust survivor family. Gabor Mate was a little boy going through the Holocaust. And he speaks a lot about trauma. And these people, any decent human being, Jewish, not Jewish, anyone, and they're very vocal about it. Norman Finkelstein, others as well. Holocaust survivors. How that's the thing. How can someone who suffered such a thing go ahead and do it against other people? And these people are doing a tremendously important job and are contributing massively because their voices, they totally destroy the pseudo-narrative alongside what everyone else is doing. They destroy it. What you want? He's a Jewish person, a Holocaust survivor. He knows what. And they exist in Israel. There's some of them in Israel as well. But some people, by the way, to mainstream media, at least, it's as if they don't exist. It's as if they do not exist on this earth, who say certain things in certain ways. So even if they would bring them, it would be a very limited manner, not too much. Show that, we're talking to these people. But they will inject the poison when they bring them as well. So be careful. Beware of the poison. Samah is saying Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro explains that Zionism is anti-Semitic by nature. Absolutely. What's happening in Gaza is anti-Semitism because it's against the Semitic people. Anything that goes against Jewish people is anti-Jewish. This anti-Semitism is a term that was established and became popular simultaneously with Zionism because it supported the Zionist notion of the ethnicizing of the Jewish religion. Judaism is not an ethnicity. Zionism wants it to be an ethnicity. Why does it want it to be an ethnicity? Because it'll solve the problem that Europe had with the Jewish people. Zionism came and solved that problem for them. So do you see how it's not just anti-Semitic, how it's racist and depraved from its core? Free Palestine, that's a nice quote that I read before. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and make the guilty innocent, and that's power because they control the minds of the masses. That's from Malcolm X. It's a very important one. And we will, let's check the last couple of things before we wrap up. And again, I'm sorry if I missed any of your comments, by the way, because like I said, they keep going up and down. But okay, I'll have one more. I found one more question and I'll end it with that. James Thompson is asking, can you elaborate on the new left resistance movements in Gaza? The left always existed. The left in Palestine always existed. The strongest groups are the groups that have more an Islamic ideology, like Hamas and the PIJ. But the leftist movements, particularly, who have a socialist kind of background, like the PFLP or PFLP-GC, the General Command, or to an extent the Democratic Front for the liberation of Palestine, they were always there and they were always active. However, their activity varies from place to place. Because you see, these resistance movement, they are a representation of people who hold that ideology, that thinking. So leftist ideology alongside the nationalist ideology and the Islamic ideology, they always existed in Palestine. At one point, they prevailed. In the 70s, for example, when there's lots of support from the from some Soviet countries as well, from the Soviet Union, for leftist movements, they conducted massive attacks, like the Jibril operation of the 80s, when they kidnapped so many Israeli, I think it was Israeli troops at the time, 11, and they swapped them for like over 1,000 and what have you. And obviously the resistance actions themselves, they evolve, if that makes sense. But in Gaza, they always exist. And one thing I can say is that they're working in complete cohesion in Gaza. The resistance works in total cohesion. Even when it comes to joint operations, you will see many of them conducting certain operations together in multiple parts of Gaza. But obviously the top two is obviously Hamas, number one, then it would be the PIJ, followed by the PFLP, that's in Gaza. Then obviously you have other smaller movements too. So I hope that elaborates. And Free Palestine, thank you so much. He said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And thank you everyone who joined me again. Sorry if I missed some of the comments, but I'm here with you regularly anyway. You're probably bored of me by now. And Marvin Vergas said, thank you for your super thanks. Said he said, sent the super thanks. Let me just go ahead to the fan funding. Let me go and see if I probably see. I even missed some of the super thanks. Okay, let me repeat. Okay, let me repeat. Daniela, Idil, Lindsay, welcome to supporter. John Doe, thank you so much. Amin, Eddie, John, thank you so much. Connie, Jason 108, Marvin, Z UK, Windy Melly, Lindsay, again, thank you so much. Free Palestine, thank you so much. Muhammad Hawli, thank all of you very much. And again, I'm sorry if I missed you. And Marvin, thank you for reminding me. That's how quickly these go up. So always remind me in case I forget. And again, thank you everyone, all of our members and subscribers and all the viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Apart from that, I'll hopefully be with you very soon. I had a couple of videos earlier if you wanted to watch them. If not, hopefully I'll be with you tomorrow night. Apart from that, enjoy your evening. Have a relaxing night and weekend ahead. And I will see you very, very soon. And take care. Salam.